All right. All right, guys. So people have been asking me to watch this for a while now, my brothers in Christ. This is a video from Jubilee. It says conservative parents versus liberal teachers. Woo! Interesting topic. We got Hassan right up front. Let's see what Hassan has to say. I guess he's watching a different one. The Generation is Misinformed video.
Bro, why'd they make this like Hans Zimmer
Hey Hassan, we know you're going to react to this video, so we want to invite you to be in an episode of Middle Ground. Maybe a one-on-one discussion with someone like Ben Shapiro.
Whoa, that would be based.
So it'll be great if you can announce your participation here first, and we can get Ben's attention. For now, enjoy the video.
Well, I don't think Ben's going to go on Middle Ground and facilitate a debate like that. But okay, cool.
It sounds like what you're saying is you want to be able to introduce all ways of life.
Yes.
So would it be
I'm gonna
okay
turn myself
to
down a
include
little
a
bit.
book with a man having a relationship with a 12-year-old in that book? I know
See,
it's extreme.
that's- no.
Hold on, but
No, why would that be okay in any context?
just
No,
hear me out.
because now
Hear
you're
me out.
equipping gay people to pedophiles.
No, this is why I'm bringing it up, is who establishes the boundary.
The law.
That's a good answer. Who establishes the boundary? The law. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Woo, crazy. Conservative parents versus liberal teachers.
Teachers have their own political agendas. Step forward if you agree.
Teachers have their own political agenda. What is? I just want to define that political. Because I mean, like everybody has. I don't think that a teacher has a political agenda. Agenda setting describes the ability of a news media to influence the important places on topics. I think that like everybody individually has their own political beliefs, and that sometimes those could drip into their teachings. I think generally that should be kept away from teaching for the most part. But okay. I lowered myself instead of the
I think
video
it's
volume.
important to recognize that individuals will have political agendas. It's a natural thing, and people should understand the political views. I think where we need to differentiate it is whether a teacher should have a political agenda in a classroom.
But is your idea of a political agenda like these teachers telling students, this is who you should vote for, if you vote for these people, it's wrong. If
Yes,
you vote for
or
these people, it's right.
ridiculing the beliefs that they may have for political or religious reasons, and using their
I can agree with that for sure.
position of authority to mold the minds of everyone else.
When it comes to diversity or these new sort of terms, I am not for certain types of so-called diversity when it comes to these new kind of topics. And
Can you
What's that?
expand upon that? Like what do you think
like
shouldn't be
critical
included?
race theory or some of the gender ideologies. It's not diverse if you're the teacher, the person of authority in the classroom.
Yeah, you know, I don't know. So listen, first of all, gay people exist, so I have no problem with them teaching about gay people. When it comes to like specific pronouns and stuff, I don't think that teachers should be like really teaching that kind of stuff unless you're like a little, maybe like 16 or older, a little more adult in like a genders class specifically. I think that if a kid's like, I want to use these pronouns, and it's okay for the teacher to be like, okay, guys, I'm going to just use these pronouns for this kid. That's fine. But I don't think that it's something that necessarily needs to be taught. Okay.
And you are saying this is how something should be.
Yeah, so I come from an elementary perspective. I'm a first grade teacher, so the conversations we're having in class
You are
isn't
teachers,
about the
so.
socioeconomic nature of the world. But you know, we do talk about just what it looks like for different people in different communities. So when I talk about a political agenda, the agenda that I have in the classroom is to create an environment where folks are able.
How old are you?
Nature of the from an elementary perspective. You know,
And you
first grade teacher.
A first grade teacher? How old are you in first grade? Do you really need to be learning about that kind of stuff? Like what?
What it looks like for different people in different communities. So when I talk about a political agenda,
I
the
wonder
agenda
what it
that I have in
means.
the classroom is to create an environment where folks are able to, better understand from wherever someone's coming from.
the problem with that, and I understand the sentiment as a teacher, if a child is sitting there and they happen to be black and you're saying, well, black people such and such and such. I mean, you're really, that's
Yeah,
not
I
okay.
do have to stop you there because that's not really said. It's not said black people do this.
Well,
it's
I'm
not
just-
said
it's just an
Mexicans do
example.
this. Again, it's trying to understand from multiple perspectives. That's not saying that every group.
I understand what she's saying. I understand where she's coming from. So like I get what she means. First of all, systemic racism, objective fact, cope. But second of all, I think that some people, and this doesn't mean that's always, I think that you have to be careful about the way that you talk about systemic racism to some people, especially like younger people, because sometimes people could get feared and decide to like not break it with some kind of like ability or CC because they're fucking goblin goobers, and then we all get fucking feared across the world, and now we're gonna wipe on the game, and that's my favorite part. The thing is, some people will over-identify with an identity that they normally wouldn't have and turn into a victim complex. This doesn't mean that this is always happening. Damn, I'm not going to break the fear either. This doesn't mean that we could probably break the fear, but I'm stupid. This doesn't mean that it's always happening. But like, you should be careful when you talk about it to say like, yeah, there are disadvantaged groups. Not everybody who belongs to that group is disadvantaged, but it's a possibility sometimes, and that it's good to talk about it in a way. It's good to talk about it in a way that like breeds productive conversation. That's pretty much it. Instead of just, like, over-identifying with it.
Group aligns on the same thought. That's not saying every group is a monolith. What it's saying is, even if you disagree with somebody or you come from a different tradition or a different cultural background, those people's opinions can still be valid.
And disagree, step forward.
I'm gonna be honest, as a teacher, especially after COVID and all of that, I don't have time for a political agenda. I'm here trying to catch up with curriculum, pick up my readers that are, 2, 3 grade levels behind. I do not have time for that. I teach social emotional skills and all of that, but I'm not here to kind of, you need to believe this, and that. No, if you're a good person, we're good, we're gravy.
That's fair. I think that sometimes people take it a little bit too far, where they think like every teacher's trying to push an agenda because they look at like libs of TikTok, you know what I mean? That's pretty much it. I think that's part of it.
You know what I mean?
But your definition, and sometimes this can happen and it becomes political, is what is your definition of a good person? Would you think that I'm a good person because I'm raising my kids to be with Judeo-Christian values and they live in a heteronormative home where we talk about how divorce is wrong, cheating is wrong. We have friends in the LGBT community, but we teach our children that from a biblical perspective, that's not okay.
I think that they're good people. Not everybody has to be perfect. Everybody has prejudice in their heart, and some people don't even realize it's prejudice. I think that living in a household that tries to teach against being LGBTQ, it could potentially be harmful. Could potentially be harmful if that kid happens to be gay. The reality is that there are a lot of biological factors in being gay. I think everybody has like a central point on like a spectrum of homosexuality. Based on the way you're raised, you might be a little gayer or straighter. I don't know, but most part, you're born being gay. And it's just a reality, bro. Teaching your kid that they can't be comfortable with that thought, like that's going to make a kid feel, can potentially make a kid feel repressed. But I don't think it comes from a place of like evil in their heart or anything like that.
Your definition of whether or not they are good could be very different than my definition of whether or not they are good.
To kind of clarify, in my classroom, if they're kind and they're not bashing anybody, judging anybody, kind of throwing out names, anything like that, they're good. It's not to say that topics like that don't come up in class. And I do open it up to discussion. I just keep it clear that this is
How
a
old
safe
is the
space.
kids that she's dealing with?
Judge each other. We're not going to bash each other. I understand you have your own experiences, but we're not going to come in with an agenda, you can say. And I feel like this idea of parents and their teachers of their political biases and all of this is just all of this fear that is clouding their judgment, clouding.
We have numerous, not just.
We have experiences.
Yeah, my own child, first week of school, what pronouns you wanted to go by? I mean, not what's your favorite subject, how can I help you succeed?
Yeah, that question would bother me too. Again, if a kid, listen, I don't know. Listen, if a kid is non-binary, whatever, that's fine. And if like they feel like, I mean, I don't know, that's a whole conversation. But if they feel like they want their gender or the pronouns to be respected, okay, fine. But to ask, I think that to ask, I don't know. I feel like it's a little too much personally. I'm just saying, I don't think, bro, it's so weird because you want to know what? Trans people exist. Trans kids exist. Let's be real. But at the same time, I do think that there are some people, especially in school, that might kind of like, they might pretend to be trans sometimes, like for be a little bit of a trans trender. I guess you'd say like, what does it matter? I guess that's true. I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter. Oh, dude, what is fearing us? I'm going to shit and come. I guess it doesn't really matter. But it's just like kind of weird to me. Maybe I'm just getting like old and I'm a fucking boomer now or something. It's just like weird to me. You know what I mean? It's just another confusing question for my kid, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being stupid. Maybe I'm just being dumb. Okay.
Academically.
Who's to say that wasn't a part of the questions too, And I understand that question could stand out.
So maybe you don't understand that you're teaching politics.
But that's not politics, that's just like basic respect.
I think that's beautiful.
But it's not to me.
That's beautiful.
Not to me.
So I think you need your idea that that's basic respect. What is the framework of that? Because
Why is my
I think that
chest
many
piece
teachers are
broken?
going through these trainings, and the trainings are saying this is the framework of how we operate in the classroom. But where did that idea come from?
Because it's based off. It's called a thing called data.
Did you
so
do
a lot
that
of,
in
hold on. A lot of
2010?
schools have research and development, and so the state also does. So in the state of California, we do research. So that at the end of the day, my job is not just to make your kid to feel comfortable. I got 55 students. I got to make 55 students feel comfortable. And so when your kid comes home and tells you, well, Mom, the teacher said, what's my pronouns? Yeah, I did say, what's your pronoun? I also said, what's your favorite TV show? What's your favorite food? I am a college professor now. I was previously a third, fourth grade teacher. Teaching third and fourth grade was horrible. Dealing with parents who thought their child was special and should be treated a certain way. It just wasn't doable. Constant complaining, accusing people of doing things that are not going on in our classes, not being enough for their child. It was just too much. When parents,
I like this guy. He doesn't give a fuck. He's just, he's telling like it is. He's talking about how there's asshole teachers.
Don't have the knowledge of what goes on inside of a school. I think it's important for those parents to go to the school, and we as educators like our parents to be involved. You know, again, I have too many students to push an agenda. I do my job, what they pay me to do.
Okay.
Discussion about sexuality doesn't belong in schools.
I mean, I think it depends on what that discussion is. So first of all, sexuality isn't inherently sexual. Like, hey, I'm gay or I'm straight or whatever, right? I mean, I think that it's okay to acknowledge gay, straight people from a history perspective. Like, we should talk about that. You know, I think that that's good to be affirming of gay people, all that jazz. I think that some of the non-binary stuff can be a little weird to me. I'm just gonna be real. But fundamentally, like, yeah, I think it's fine to talk about sexuality as long as it's not promoting sex. Who cares? I don't really give a fuck, you know?
I had a sex ed class when I was in 3rd grade, and it was quite simple. Boys go in this room, girls go in this room, they play a little video on a black and white TV. You know, you see the genitalia, and you're like, oh God, I got one of those, cool, now we're figuring out what I am. The fear is these...
A lot of those videos were like sexually based though, and they were like, or they're like, don't have sex ever or you'll die. That I watched those videos, you know what I mean?
Schools
I
have
love
no
it too, bro.
boundaries. If they do the classroom thing where they want to split kids up, how many genders are we going to do this? We're going to put boys, them, and then girls, and then how many rooms do we need to create for equality? Or are we really chasing equity? And I think...
What the fuck? Listen. Why would you need to separate boys and girls in the classroom? Like, why is it a bad thing to just have everybody learn the same thing? Like, realistically speaking, hey, let's have a girl learn about boy anatomy. We're mature adults. It's not bad. That young girl may grow up to have a boy child at some point, or it might be helpful for them to understand the male anatomy. Same thing with a guy. Like, why shouldn't a guy learn female anatomy? Like, it could be helpful in their life if they have a daughter. Why do we need to separate these things in this weird way? Like, not even from a gender perspective. Isn't it a good thing if men, like young boys, girls, whatever, are educated on the anatomy of each other? Like, we're mature adults. Why does it even need to be gendered? Like, it doesn't really need to be gendered. Was it in 3rd grade? That's a little early, I guess, but I don't know. Whenever they deem it appropriate to talk about it, like, whatever. I just don't understand.
I think parents now are beginning to realize we got to stop this and create framework about sexuality, especially in a hyper-sexualized culture. My kids don't need to know at 6, 7, 8 years old about different types of sexual acts. That's not appropriate.
People think that this is
Well, who the fuck's talking about different sexual acts? We're talking about sexuality, like liking gay dudes or gay girls or straight dudes or whatever. Why does that become so sexual? What the fuck's happening here? Am I missing something here? I'm so confused. Okay.
It's just kind of happening. It's a one-off. It is in so many schools. Where I live in Florida, there was a poster going around where kids could text anonymous strangers to get information about sex. And on this poster in school, want to get laid?
Wow.
I mean, it's beyond. And
I just don't believe that. What? Did somebody show that to me? You're talking about they have a fucking... Are you telling me that they have infrastructure to help kids get laid? I'm so confused. I feel like this just can't be true. It's so preposterous. I just don't think that this is true. I'm not understanding what she's saying.
And they're on this going around where kids could, so many schools. Where I live in Florida, there was a poster going around where kids could text anonymous strangers to get information about sex. And on this poster in school, want to get laid?
Wow.
I mean, it's beyond, and there is a push for pleasure.
Can you show it to me? I feel like there's something wrong with the context here. Is she saying that like there's a random number that you can contact to figure out? It's such a preposterous thing. I would need to see it. I don't know. Like, is it a random number for people to be able to talk about? I would need to see it. I don't know.
Pleasure-based sex. Pleasure for who?
My oldest is 9 years old. She's in 3rd grade.
What? Who's teaching pleasure-based sex? I'm very... Can we show this? Because like, listen. So my thing is that in a lot of schools historically, what people have done is teach that you should never have sex. It's bad for you to get an STD regardless. And the unfortunate reality is that young kids are horny and it's gross and it's disgusting to think about, but they are. And eventually they're going to end up having sex. And so if you don't teach them the proper sexual health education, they're going to end up just fucking around, and it's not going to work. Abstinence-free sex doesn't work. It leads to like higher teen pregnancy rates. So, like, you have to, like, are they teaching pleasure-based sex, or are they just teaching people to, are they just teaching young people to understand sex better so that they don't get pregnant at a a young age. You know what I mean? Like, which one are we talking about here? Dude, are you fucking kidding me right now?
She's been exposed to things and we do have conversations about it, but that's a conversation that I should be having with my 9-year-old daughter. If a 6th grader or a 4th grader is going to be prompted by a teacher, hey, what are your pronouns? As a parent, I should have a heads up about that because they're not even going to understand the question. And so I think that the idea that those conversations are started in the classroom instead of in the home is a big problem.
I have a family member who first day of 6th grade was asked for her pronouns and she stood up and said that as a person of faith, she believed that God didn't make a mistake making her a girl. And so therefore she identified as a she, her, and she was sent to the principal's office and punished for that decision.
That kid's based as fuck. Are you kidding me? I think that's a perfectly acceptable answer. I can see why people think that would be mean, but like, okay, hey, listen, God bless you. You got to learn that there's people with strong beliefs, okay? You go, Jesus Christ. Holy fuck, base kid.
Thankfully, we haven't seen that broadly yet, but I think it's really damaging to take a shy, innocent 11-year-old child and make them stand in front of a classroom and determine something that they maybe haven't even put that much thought into.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
I like what you said, Sean, about how you were emphasizing how a lot of parents today felt a goodness of the way that sexual education was conducted in the past. So there is an agreement that sexuality should be talked about in schools. The disagreement is whether it should just be purely heteronormative or if we should include all aspects of sexuality. I don't think that we're doing demonstrations to encourage children how to have sex, but this is something that we are trying to, again, educate and make them aware that this kind of things happen. And while you grow up, you're going to have to experience somebody who's of this orientation.
Kids are naturally curious, and I think that what I'm hearing from you is I understand where you're maybe potentially coming from, but then where's the line between that sex education and introducing them to porn? Because porn can be...
Holy fuck, I just shit and cum. What are you talking about? How does the porn pipeline? Because what? That seems like a fucking stretch.
Educational. I was a virgin when I got married, and for years I was made fun of and heard, well, how are you going to know if you don't try it? We hear that a lot too. If you haven't tried to kiss a girl to see if you like it or not, then how do you really know that you're not a lesbian? How do you really know that you're not gay if you've never slept with a...
Who cares? I mean, first of all, like, okay, it's called experimentation. Like, if you're going to experiment when you're young, that's fine. Doesn't mean you have to watch fucking porn. Porn is very toxic, especially for the minds of children. So I will agree with that. But like, what the fuck are you talking about porn? Like, you don't have to watch porn to get these things. You don't have to experiment with your friend and give him a little smooch and going, oh, I'm not gay. That's not porn. We're going a little drastic here.
How do you really know that you want to be in a monogamous relationship if you don't sleep around? And when you start to introduce those questions to children, specifically prepubescent ones, they're going to naturally be curious. And
who's doing that? This is just not a thing that's happening. Like, I don't think it's appropriate to talk about having a polyamorous relationship. I mean, I feel like that's just not necessary to talk about. What are you on about? Like, I feel like none of this is actually happening. Not in this way. Trying to make it seem like there's like a pipeline or something. Okay, let me keep
Emotional and hormonal maturity is not there to be making those types of decisions that have lifelong impact.
Well, you're right.
What lifelong impact does it have to fucking kiss a girl on the lips? What are you talking about, you insane woman? A lifelong impact? What do you mean? What's happening? What lifelong impact is there if a kid's like, maybe I'm gay? We all think it regardless. Like, listen, I was questioning if I was gay or straight when I was young too. It's just a fucking thing that people do. She's like running wild like a bird.
A lot of them are learning at home because just like you guys are saying, they come home to tell you things. Well, guess what? Those same kids come to school and talk about what you're telling them at home. You'll be surprised what I hear from students when I do it. What do you think? Well, let me tell you what my mama and daddy did. And look, I don't have time. Your kid is not that important to me, not to be rude. I got like 300 students.
I love this guy.
No more important than the other 299. So I don't have time to sit up here and let me get you to think like me. I can't get my own 23-year-old to think like me. At the end of the day, what needs to happen, and this is just my own personal take, parents need to start being parents because a lot of times the teachers are the parents. They're parenting your kids because absentee parenting.
I think that this conversation is really interesting, and I think we need to step back and look at why we automatically assume that if we're telling our children about lesbians, gay people, queer people, why do we immediately equivocate that to telling them about what sex is? That can just be something as simple as, here is a book. In this book, there are 2 dads. This book character has 2 dads. And kids, they can be inquisitive, and that's good, right? But also, like, they're gonna be like, cool, there's 2 dads.
All these kids know that there's a dad and a dad and a mom, and the culture is teaching all of that. So what we've noticed is that the curriculum in 8th grade and up is a lot deeper than that. It's more like, here is how you can have sex so you do not get pregnant. Illustration of...
Oh, yeah. I mean, if there's illustrations, that's weird. But, like, yeah, kids are going to have sex whether you like it or not. It's good to teach them safe sex practices. Maybe the way that they do it could be fixed, but okay.
Anal sex. That is the stuff that we are now reacting against. And sadly...
Can you show that to me? Because I just feel like that's not happening. But I could be wrong. But, like, what they're teaching about having anal sex... I want to see this material.
Is the trust that's being broken between teachers and parents.
Yeah, and I think we're moving into a conversation about comprehensive sex ed. What I am talking about is when I go into this classroom and I'm teaching kids, I'm not going to just teach kids material that is heteronormative.
Out of curiosity, it sounds like what you're saying is you want to be able to introduce all ways of life. Like these are the people that you will encounter with throughout life.
That is what I'm arguing, yes.
So would it be okay to include a book with a man having a relationship with a 12-year-old in that book? I know
No, that's a dumb thing to say. It is. Like, listen, no, because it's illegal and that's wrong and that's harmful. And there's objective reasons why adults shouldn't fucking rape children, because there's no such thing as consensual sex with children. It's not even close to analogous. It's a silly, stupid thing. And yeah, it for sure is like really just bizarrely making the comparison of like gay people and pedophiles. Now, he may not be intentional with that. He might just be trying to construct a conversation of like, well, there is too far. That's true, but that doesn't mean that gay is too far. That's a drastically different thing. So we have to acknowledge that.
Extreme. Hold on, but just hear me out.
Because now you're equating gay people to pedophiles.
No, I'm not.
And no, that's not who
that is not.
You're drawing a line that I'm not drawing.
And you're definitely crossing the line.
I agree. I agree. And this is why I'm bringing it up: is who establishes the boundary?
The law.
But what? The law is.
But the law that's been signed in is some
No, I'm sorry. No, there's laws between adults having sex with children. Now, if a student had two parents who happen to be of the same sex, I'm not going to sit there and discount who they are in my class. I cannot do that. I sign a contract.
I would never ask anybody to uplift or suppress any child. I want there to be equality in the classrooms. What I am saying is that there are factual instances where this is being taught in classrooms. I pulled my children out of public school because there are so many instances of this happening. I am a parent. I'm looking in the book bag every day. I'm checking in with homework. I am talking to the teachers and the principals, and I'm involved. But we didn't know that, during class, there were images shown of literal sex acts or describing certain situations that were inappropriate for young children.
We have a belief system.
But I just don't listen. That could be true. I don't have a kid in school, but I also don't like what's the line? Like, what does she mean? Like, is it a sexual health education class? Like, it's hard to take her just basic word for it, especially taking your kid out of public school. Like, rest in peace to that fucking kid. They're probably shit. Like, they're fucked. But
system at home, and the children want to break the boundaries of that belief system naturally because we're human beings. That's just what we do, and we're trying to confine them to a set of beliefs to say this is what is right in our home. And we're seeing the schools get funding from Planned Parenthood. They tried to pass a bill to put medical facilities to offer abortions in high schools here in California, and it's gradual, right? It starts with.
I mean, why are kids in high school getting pregnant? Like, if you're not hot take, and I know things are more complicated than this, and so it could be a little bit more complicated. I'm sorry if I offend you for saying this, but if your kid is pregnant in high school, then you've made a mistake as a parent. Like, why is your kid getting pregnant in high school? Like, let's not, like, listen, I get it, you're anti-abortion, blah, blah, blah. Why the fuck is your kid getting pregnant? Like, I mean, that's not a good thing. Like, clearly the kid lacks some kind of education in some capacity, or you're just not a fucking you're not a very existent parent. One of these two things is the truth. And I know that there's some people might like pop up that was, a mistake. I get it. But still, I mean, making a mistake as a parent doesn't mean you're a bad parent, by the way, right? So what the fuck? Like, okay, you think that's weird? I don't. Like, if my fucking 16-year-old daughter got pregnant by some fucking dude, I'd probably want her to get an abortion. I'm sorry if that's harsh. We could talk about my specific views on abortion another time. But realistically speaking, I don't think that a 16-year-old should be carrying a fucking baby. That's crazy. She's still a child. I don't think that she should be trying to raise a child. So, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like abortion. I don't like that it's necessary sometimes, but it's a necessary evil in my mind. And that's just the reality, man. So...
This is a book that has two dads. This is a book with two moms. And it's just a gradual curiosity that could leverage and break away that child from the root in the home.
My education growing up was fully public education. College is where I started getting a curiosity for truth and education, and I think I'm so passionate about the education system today because it is obviously broken, but how do we fix it? Many of these progressive ideas in fixing it is just more empathy, sympathy, safety, but in reality, I see the public school system isn't actually accomplishing the goal of what education is, which is teaching critical thinking, how to understand, how to ask good questions, and then comprehend how to problem solve.
Okay. Interesting. Affirmative action is racial discrimination. I feel like it's such a vague question. Is this an offhanded item? I will shit and come. No, it's not. The fuck? Okay. I don't know. The conversation about affirmative action is kind of interesting. Ultimately, it's about acknowledging a disparity in society. And then trying to operate in a way to minimize that disparity, which makes perfect sense to me. I don't think that it's racist. I think that like it's not, maybe it's not ideal, but then ideally we wouldn't have racial discrimination. I guess in some ways it can turn out to be unfair or potentially problematic. I think it's overall a good thing. There's like a mismatch theory that's interesting to me. I don't know exactly how I feel about it, but it's this concept of like, because of quotas existing for certain schools or colleges, it could potentially put people of color that may not necessarily normally qualify for a particular position, into that area where they would do better at a college that was like a little bit lesser but still a good college. And maybe there's something to that. It's an interesting concept. There's also a concept of like, with racial issues going on, it potentially incentivizes hiring white people over black people, because if you fire a white guy, they can't call racism, but if you fire a black guy, like, they can. I don't know if these things are these massive issues that are actually happening. In fact, I doubt it. It's interesting to think about. I don't think anything is perfect, but the reality is affirmative action is a response to like historical systemic racism, right? So I guess, yeah, I mean, I guess it is discrimination, but is it bad discrimination? Let me look at what discrimination means definitionally, right? Like, if you look at me and like, if there's two people, let's say there's two people, then they're trying to get food, and one of them is Papa Gut, big fat fuck, and somebody else, you know, they want food, and like I go up for some food, and like we're in a survival scenario, and they're like, who needs the food? And I'm like, I want it, and then somebody's like, well, I'm a thin child dying. You discriminate against me by not giving it to me, but justifiably. I guess definitionally it says make unjust or prejudicial distinction in the treatment of different categories of people. Well, I guess it's just then, so I guess it wouldn't be discrimination. Okay. Ooh.
There was a high school down the street from where I live in Los Angeles that encouraged all the kids of color to apply for their school play. And only once all the kids of color received whatever positions they wanted, then the white kids could apply.
That's stupid. That's obviously discriminatory. Yeah, I mean, that's weird. That's overcorrecting. Like, that's literally dumb. It's a dumb thing. Oh, I got to kill this for a quest.
That, in my opinion, is an example of
for sure
discrimination. The fact that we now have Harvard has black-only kids' dorms, that to me is segregation.
Interesting. I have to look into that, but I can't because I'm in the middle of a fucking game. That's interesting. I don't know. I wonder if it's to make them feel safer, maybe? I guess I could see why they would. It is segregation, but like, is it if they force the black kids to do it, then I'd probably be bad. But if you're like, hey, we understand maybe you want a safe space, remind me to look that up after I kill this.
With affirmative action, we've seen with Harvard lawsuits and other things how it's backfiring, and it's picking and choosing of which minorities can and cannot have success. It was done to try to create or make up for the wrongs of our past, but I think it's really backfired.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, excluding those.
I don't know if it backfired. Like, again, it's trying to pull people into positions that they may not normally get. So I get the concept of it. You know, okay.
Selling students in other races to fix the problems of the past, like you said. But I think the past, there were a lot of minorities that were excelling and doing really well.
Despite the foot of the government.
I'm sure that there were, but proportionately, I don't know, man. We did the whole bomb in a Black Wall Street. We did a lot of bad things as a country. We didn't do them individually, but I don't think that you could argue that like affirmative action has been a negative. I think that there's been a lot of bad things going on outside of affirmative action that have had a profoundly negative impact. A lot of it really is class issues. Okay.
And like, kudos to them. Incredible, strong human beings, and we shouldn't have that discrimination in any way anymore. But unfortunately, it has become a discrimination against other groups.
Yeah, it's racism. It is racism. If you are taking a group of people and judging them on their race and setting them aside, giving them a special treatment, if you are uplifting a person or you are trying to suppress a person because of their race, that is racism. So
well, I mean, if the uplifting is necessary, I don't think I would call that racism. But okay.
Supposed to believe that someone like Barack Obama's children are like struggling because they're black? Like,
no, it's a good point. Not black people aren't a monolith, and sometimes people go too far. Like I've said, like this is one of my things again. Like, okay, so when I talk about it, I always talk about how we need to deal with like class issues over dealing with race issues, because I think that it'll kind of all settle it out. Because I don't think that giving reparations to all black people would be constructive as giving some kind of a reparation to like poor people, helping poor people, because like a Oprah Winfrey or a rich black person does not need the money nearly as much as the poor white person. I get that. Let's see, Harvard black only dorm. History of the desegregation of Harvard's fresh. Okay. What? What do you think of Harvard having a black-only graduation? So apparently they had a black-only graduation. That seems weird. Do they have like a dorm thing? I don't see anything about a dorm. They had separate graduation ceremonies, which that seems bizarre. That seems stupid. I get the dorm kind of. I don't think I'd be okay with it necessarily, but I kind of get the dorm because it's like maybe a comfortability thing. But maybe, you know what? Maybe that's playing. Maybe just because I get it doesn't mean it's okay. A black-only dorm would be kind of silly unless it was like in a super racist area, I guess. But like I feel like a black-only graduation, like maybe you'd be like, oh, I get it because maybe it makes them feel more comfortable. At the end of the day, like sometimes society operating isn't comfortable, so I think that that's silly. Okay.
Like, that's ridiculous. I pulled my oldest daughter out a public school in Florida. We were having debates about pulling down statues
In Florida? She pulled her kid out of Florida? This woman's fucking crazy. Oh no, I want to get that. This woman's fucking crazy, no? Like, we understand that this woman's fucking insane, right? She pulled a kid out of Florida. I doubt that there's any real issue going on in Florida with too much fucking pandering to progressives, okay? This woman is just a psychopath. I'm sorry. But I mean, Jesus.
changing names, and some of the school board members and some of the activist groups were saying that black children could not learn because of names on buildings, and that is completely asinine to me.
Okay.
It basically says that because we have a higher level of melanin, somehow our brains don't work. And every other kid could walk into the building and get the education that they needed, but somehow not for you black children. And
What the fuck is she talking about? Could somebody direct me something I could read? Because maybe she has a point, but she's not very good at expressing it.
found that to be just disgusting. And I did not want my children to have any type of idea coming from authority figures who believed in such things like that.
First of all, I would like to say that affirmative action programs, the biggest beneficiary according to the data, and this has been government data, has been white women first and foremost. Second of all, I would never use Obama.
Hey, then that's an issue with affirmative action, am I right? White women do not need more things.
Barack Obama's kids as a barometer for anything because they do have privilege as well as Will Smith kids. But if
True.
we talk about Laquan Smith down the street that nobody knows, there will be some impediments based on his race. Yeah.
Why? How do you know that?
Because people do tend to look and see race, which you were talking about just racism, but when it's institutional and structural, it does something totally different. And when the black wealth gap is 100 years behind the white wealth gap in America, it'll take 100 years to catch up.
Why do you think that's because of racism, though?
Oh, I like this guy. This guy's smart. I like this guy. He's like a smart, progressive, like dude. Like he's not some like I like this guy a lot. Only because like he's telling people that he hates their kids, and he's telling people some like blunt truths, and he doesn't give a fuck. I hate preachy people. They bother me. But this dude's just like, listen, I don't like your kids. You guys have your entitled parents. You're fucking assholes. That pisses me the fuck off. It annoys the shit out of me. And racism exists. And he doesn't give a fuck. That's what it is. You know what? That's what it is. There are so many people who are like progressive, but like, I don't know, like they feel like you need to know it or you need to accept them. This guy's just like, I don't give a fuck about you, bro. I like this guy. I like this guy. He's a fucking alpha male. He's a fucking alpha male, dude. He's the most based progressive. He just doesn't give a fuck. I like this guy. I like him.
You take one thing and say that is the cause for every person of color.
The data
What data? What data is saying that black people are behind? Because there are many black people that aren't behind, that are doing much better than other people.
You're absolutely.
When we talk about these, we talk about generalities, right? So like when we talk about things on like a systemic level, like black people are behind because of fucking literally they weren't people 60 years ago, right? Civil Rights Act, 60 years ago. So that's probably a pretty good indication. When you're forcibly segregating people, you know, you're not you're redlining them, they're enslaved, they weren't even people on paper. Of course, it's probably the reason for the disparity. Unless you think that black people are just fucking animals. Because like what's your argument then? Why do you think that there's these disparities generally speaking? Are there successful black people? Absolutely. It's just black people aren't different from white people. So when you put them in a situation that's like similar when it comes to growing up, they're going to perform similarly. Duh. It's going to be the same. The exact same. It doesn't matter. But generally speaking, this group of people has gotten their shit stuffed. So like it's just about kind of dealing with that. You know what I'm saying, dude? It's not that big of a deal. And again, if we just care a fuck about class issues, we probably have less of this fucking problem. But, you know, that's where we are right now.
Absolutely right, and there are outliers in every single community. There are very strong, members of the Black community that are very affluent. There are also a majority that
I'm stronger.
live in poverty. And if we see a bunch of cities that are majority person of color, and we're trying to recognize why have these places stayed at a very stable poverty line. But there are systemic reasons to why these communities are like that. How would you say that?
I would say probably because of policies that are in those cities.
Racist policies,
Hold on,
absolutely.
we gotta define terms. When would you say that Watson?
Well, I want to hear what she has to say because, like, yeah, of course there are policies, absolutely, but she's not gonna. She seems like she might be more against. So, okay, which policies is she referring to specifically? It's like the war on crime, yeah, but like a lot of black politicians were all for that too because they didn't know that it was gonna be bad either. You know what I mean? Like we're all a little sussy sometimes. You know what I mean?
Compton became the way that it is. Was it like that in the 40s and 50s?
No, it's a growth
No,
because
I'm
of the
asking
policies,
you,
from
when-
redlining policies that were enabled.
In California?
Yeah, absolutely. California put in racist policies. I would never deny that.
All of these supposed solutions are
This conservative guy's like, in California, racism here? He's like, yeah. Did you know that? Did you know that? Yes, progressive areas are still used to be racist. Like, what do you mean? Even here? Because I've been living here for 20 years and I've never seen racism. I was like, oh, okay. Well, you know that the world is actually 21 years old, so that's why you didn't see it then.
actually hurting. Wouldn't a better solution be to teach our kids that we're all born in the image of God? We should all treat one another equally. And if you're if you don't believe in
then all men
God,
should be
then we're
created
all
equal with certain
we're all
individuals.
equal, right? If you come from a poor neighborhood, whether you're black or Hispanic or an immigrant from anywhere, obviously you don't have the same privileges that somebody who comes from a wealthy community. But that has
Sure.
nothing to do with your color. I don't think that if you're
Well, no, it does though, because the reason why a lot of black people are poor is because of their color. Because as a society, we said that's yucky, and then we put them in that area. It's not that deep, bro. It's not that deep. It's not that fucking deep, and it doesn't hurt me as a person to acknowledge that. Like, I don't understand why. Sometimes I don't understand why people are so sensitive to like these things where it's like acknowledging that like maybe you aren't like. Here's the thing: that you aren't advantage. Like maybe you're advantaged in society, or maybe the problem is that you're not advantaged as a white person. You're disadvantaged as a black person, and we put it into the perspective the wrong way that makes people feel frustrated. But it doesn't have a negative impact on me to acknowledge this stuff. It's this shit happens, bro. Yeah, it's unfortunate. How do we fix it? That's where the question comes down to. You know what I mean?
an impoverished black kid or you're an impoverished white kid, one should receive a resource and the other shouldn't.
Would you say that that's economic?
I agree with that too. I think if we should do it based on class to have the best outcome overall for America, even if that's a little unfair to black people. But you know what? Take another L, I guess. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I know it's unfortunate. But see, that's where people would probably like 20 years from now, we'll be talking about how we'll all understand systemic racism exists, and then we'll be having the conversation of whether we should deal with black issues versus poverty issues. And I'll be on poverty issue side, and they'll call me a fucking racist conservative, and it's gonna be fucking crazy. It's gonna happen, bro. I'm gonna remember back to this video.
Then is the reason that causes these disparities?
Economic, but I don't think it's related to color.
But would you say if there's a majority of a particular group that lies underneath the poverty line in economic, that race has anything to do with that?
It could, but it's just not blanket. You don't know. Why don't we look?
You're right. There might be some poor black people who are poor because like their parents made bad decisions or something. But like generally speaking, you know, a little racism has to do with it. At the end of the day, let's just focus on class. We don't even have to have this complicated conversation. Like, who cares?
At the families, the black families who have done those amazing things in this country and study what they did to succeed instead of just focusing on, oh, well, black people are behind and we don't even know what to do. Well, why don't we just go and look? Since you are a professor, wouldn't that be, you go and look at what has worked?
Well, I would never just go to you and just look at you. Again, and I'm sorry, it's just the reality of the data. And so what I share...
Data can be broken up in umpteen different ways.
No, it can't.
Yes, it
No,
can.
actually,
You're a professor.
Data can be misrepresentative for sure, but then like, how is it? What's the way that? How do you? This is one of the things I always ask people. This is I don't know. Like, why do you think that there are disparities then? Like, why do you think that there's a disparity here? Like, what magical force do you think happened? Like, why do you think black people are generally doing worse than white people? Answer that question. And like, do you think that black people are just dumb? If you say no, then unless there's systemic racism, what's your argument? I don't understand. You know.
And you're saying that data cannot be manipulated? This is why my kids do not go to public school anymore.
And I'm glad they don't.
This woman's a fucking psychopath. Her kids are going to grow up dumb as shit. And then her kids will be poor, but they won't be poor because of racism. They'll be poor because they had a dumb fucking mother who like literally can't cope with basic facts that systemic racism exists. Like, it's holy fuck. This is why you can manipulate data. You can. What do you like? But what do you think is being manipulated here? Like, what is the specifics? It just sounds like she doesn't want to believe it, and so she's just saying it doesn't exist. That's it.
I just think it's interesting. I'm thinking of like an anecdotal story I have. Last year, the school that I taught at, Deep East Oakland, I served majority black and brown students. Over 70% of our families under the poverty line. These are some of the hardest working people I have ever seen in my life. They get up, they have 2 or 3 jobs, 3 or 4 children.
I would argue
because of their economic status, right?
Because of liberal policies that is the government telling them that they can and cannot succeed, because of how high our property taxes are here, because we do not have school choice where they can take their dollars somewhere else. If you put those same families in redder districts in the country, that is the government telling them that they can and cannot succeed because of how high our property taxes are here, because we
Okay, so high property taxes will usually equate to usually are for schools. So you increase property taxes for schools for better schooling. I'm not going to say that the economic hardship doesn't hurt, but usually that's what it's for. But okay.
do not have school choice where they can take their dollars somewhere else.
So school choice is a dumb idea, and I'm going to explain to you why. Because a lot of people like to say that like school choice. Oh, it's a great. Okay. It sounds nice on paper, but check this out. Okay, so school choice is the idea of you get to choose your school. That's such a basic thing. Well, obviously, duh. Like, why wouldn't you do that? Problem is let's say you have 3 schools. Really quick. You got school number 1. Where's my fucking thing? School number 1, school number 2, school number 3. Let's just say that there's like 200 kids in each school, right? And let's just say that this is the best school here, this is the second best school, and this is the third best school. Generally, my opinion is let's build up every school so that there you have better outcomes and they're all equal outcomes as to the best of our ability, right? What you're saying is like let kids choose a school. Well, if I was a parent, I would choose the best school. So now you have all the people in school number 3 choosing to go to school number 1, all the people from school number 2 going to school number 1 because he's the best school. So now you have 600 people going to one fucking school, and now you have abandoned buildings with nobody going there. So then what's the, we can put a limit on the number of people in the school. Okay, so then eventually, so your kids are still going to go to the worst schools. Plus how expensive it would be to drive the kids there, because now you got to have school buses pick them up. That's a more expensive solution to put everybody in one school. And then if you have too many kids in a classroom, that's just less attention for each person. That's why it's a bad idea. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to say it's dumb, but it's a very bad idea. It doesn't work out. When you put it on paper and you look at it, you're like, oh, that is a bad idea. This doesn't actually work the way I want it to. School choice is not good. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work out. It sounds nice, but it's not magical. We don't live in The Sims where you can just pick up and move buildings instantaneously.
If you put those same families in redder districts in the country, like places in Florida and Texas or Virginia, where they have better options for their family, you would definitely see them be able to succeed.
I feel like schools in bluer areas are better because they have more support systems. Schools in richer areas are better. Maybe Texas wouldn't be that bad because it has money. I wonder, like, I mean, maybe I can find like a data on this. So we have, okay. Why do blue states have higher education levels? Local education agencies in blue states are much more likely to pursue after school and summer learning as their primary strategies, while districts in red states are more likely to invest in curriculum. Okay, this is a COVID thing. Let's see. Okay, so the best school. So, okay, states with the best and worst school systems. Okay, so, okay. Pretty sure Massachusetts is a blue state. States, let's see. USA map by political party. Okay. Okay. Maybe they do have better states. Let's see. I'm not super. Oh, incredible! I gotta love it. All right. So let's see. Where's Massachusetts? I went to a red state, so I don't really know where Massachusetts is. Massachusetts up here. It's a blue state. Connecticut, blue state. New Jersey, blue state. Virginia, I think, is a red state. Where is Virginia? Virginia's a red state, right? I think so. Okay. Maryland, that's a blue state. Delaware, blue state. New Hampshire, it's a blue state. North Dakota. No, that's North Carolina. Where the Dakotas at? Are they over here? Oh, it's a red state. Okay. Nebraska. That is a red state. Okay. Wisconsin. That's a blue state. It seems like Maine, that's a blue state. Utah, that's probably a red state. It seems like the bluer states tend to be a little bit better because they have more investment into their school system. So I think that maybe those are better. I don't know if she's right about that. Texas wasn't very high up on that list. VA is Virginia. Okay. Anyway.
Black and brown children are still underperforming in schools?
But coming from Florida, the school that I was at, it's graded from like A to like D, F. When I started there, it was a C school. Very poor performing. And technically, sure, they have school choice. They don't state test anymore. But they're still so badly performing. The community of it, black, brown, very little white students in that community. But not to say that student of color can't be more affluent, but I think it's ridiculous to kind of say that color doesn't play a part into disparities and just disadvantages. So in Florida, a lot of people that I had encountered weren't kind to others, and sometimes I would have coworkers call students retarded and using racist slurs and things like that.
Were they right? Oh, I'm just kidding. It's fucked up. You should be calling kids the R slur. It's fucked up. It's for destroying kids' fucking like mental shit. They'll fuck them up, make them think that they're less than, bro.
And from my standpoint, hearing something like that, it disgusted me. My coworkers very quickly were able to kind of distinguish me from the rest. Like if I was gonna come to the teacher's lounge, more hush conversation, people wouldn't share as much as they used to just because I would call out.
Well, maybe you should have called the kids the R slur just to fit in, because that's what you're supposed to do, guys. Come on, you got to be, you got a little more base than that.
Behavior like that.
Teachers with guns make schools safer.
Teachers with guns. You know, that's an interesting concept. I don't know exactly how I feel about that. I mean, the reality is like we shouldn't have to have teachers with guns. Like it's preposterous that we have such an issue in America with guns that would need it. But at the end of the day, maybe it would be better. I don't know about a teacher. Maybe like a security guard with a gun might be a little better. I mean, it might make the kid feel really unsafe in a way where it's like, wow, my school is like a prison, because you'd have to do like maybe one entry, one exit kind of a thing. I don't know. That's a tough one, brother.
You know what? I'm going to disagree.
So I was really...
I think we should give the kids the guns, because if every kid has a gun, then there'll probably never be a problem again. If we're thinking smarts, we're thinking smart.
In between, I didn't really know how I felt about this issue at first. But then I started looking at places that had armed their teachers. So I believe that model is good. It has
Really? You looked at those places? What do you mean? Did you look at that data from those places? How do you know that the data wasn't corrupted? Like you just assumed that all data that disagrees with you is corrupted. Oh, really interesting perspective. Oh, interesting.
voluntary.
Yes.
So the teachers have to want to do it themselves. They have to be well trained.
Yes.
They have to have
Sure.
background checks periodically. That has been successful.
Like, I'm just wondering, like, what do you, like, what, okay, so listen, I'm not against the idea necessarily. It's a little bizarre. I'm not 100% on it yet, but I will say, what data could you possibly look at? Yeah, these teachers had guns and the school didn't get shot up. Okay, well, I mean, if we look at this thing like kind of more objectively, there aren't that many school shootings compared to the number of schools. One is too many. But realistically, like, how would you gauge that? Like, how would you even begin to gauge like how that school would be safer because it has a gun? It doesn't make any sense. You know what would make schools safer? If the police actually did their fucking job and they didn't stand outside the hallway for 45 minutes. That might actually be a little bit better than all teachers having guns. How about cops that aren't fucking inept? I understand that like one cop made the call, but you know, not for nothing. In these shootings, they're like, I can't go in. It's not safe yet. You want to know what? The cop is the one that should die before the child because you signed up for it and that kid didn't. So I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to be blunt. I don't want cops to die. But at the end of the day, who should be dying to a gunshot? A cop or a fucking, a kid? Or a teacher? It's probably a cop, and it's unfortunate because it never should be put in that situation, but that's what you signed up for. That's why you get paid tax money and you get decent insurance so that the kids don't get killed. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's pretty fucked. You should have went in.
If we're trusting teachers, which in some cases we do, in some cases we don't, but if my mindset is that if we're going to trust teachers to mold our children's minds and educate them, they're there for 8 hours a day. We should also trust and kind of enable them to protect themselves and our kids physically.
I think by no means should we ever force a teacher to carry a gun, but if a teacher is willing to take on the responsibility of learning.
That's right. It's that teacher's body, so it's their choice of whether they should have a gun or not, guys. Okay?
How to handle a weapon properly, I think that we should allow them to do that for us, and it frankly would be an incredible service to us.
All right, so just to break it open, this conversation is so much more nuanced than to arm or not to arm. And if you want to save a school, you need to get parental engagement. Let's look at the mindset of the individuals that are going into these homes with firearms. Those individuals are not mentally okay. There's something wrong happening, whether it's at school, in the house, whether it's, who knows, maybe it's something they're consuming online. And I think that's the parent's job to continue to engage to make sure that child is healthy. A lot of these kids...
I agree with that, but like at the end of the day, there are just bad parents that are not going to make sure that their kid's healthy because they don't care as much. Or maybe they're just like a little naive and they don't understand how to identify their kids going through like a struggle. It's a cool idea, but at the end of the day, like I feel like that might be a little difficult infrastructure wise. I mean, I would say if we dealt with some of the wealth disparity, the wealth gap, we probably have a better. We could probably have like fewer people feeling frustrated. Also, with the last mass situation that happened, I didn't see anybody talk about the person's name, which was a good thing, right? Because sometimes it makes these people feel powerful and immortalized when they get like, oh, such and such shot up a school. Oh, I feel good now because my name was in the paper, you know? I think that that's probably a good thing to do as well, avoid as well.
As well, that are going into schools that are not mentally healthy. They're coming from single-parent households. They're living with their grandparents. There's something intrinsically with their identity that's broken. And I think that whether you arm a school or you don't, it's not going to change it if you don't address the real issue.
I agree with you. The people that are perpetrating these crimes and these like mass casualties are messed up individuals. I would absolutely agree. Mass shootings are a uniquely American problem. So if we try to understand what's the root, why does America solely have that problem? I would say it's a gun culture problem. So if the idea is, should we try to remove aspects of gun culture that really pervade in our society? Should we do that, or should we just increase the amount of firearms we can have in every single space, just so that way we're properly ready for a gunfight whenever?
I want to clarify gun culture.
That's fair. I mean, like, listen, I believe in the idea of people being able to carry guns, but they probably should be a little more difficult to be able to possess. You know what I'm saying? That's fair. Oh, I got a dog.
Are you saying that there's like the shoot 'em up, bang 'em up video games? Or are you saying
no? I wouldn't say it's video games. I'd say
it's a video game. Shut the fuck up. Hey, do you think it's the video games, or do you think it's real? It's because it's really easy to go through gun loopholes and get a gun at a fucking gun show without really any real background checks. I think it's the Call of Duty. It's the Call of Duty. It's Call of Duty. I was like, okay, cool.
Institutions like the NRA that heavily impose, you need to own not just firearms, but as many firearms as you can. I personally do not like to be armed. I do not want to take lethal action in the classroom.
I just want to have two arms.
A safe and inclusive environment. Arming teachers is a response measure to particular violence that goes on in our schools here in America. And personally, I think we should focus more towards solutions to prevent these occurrences from happening, rather than just implementing responses implying that these actions will occur.
And I'm just going to be honest with you, you don't want to have a gun, because I had to go back to therapy in the last few months, and so I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying, what your plan was, but I'd also say mental health. We got to understand, some of these school shootings are done because people have snapped.
People have natural biases and things like that, and people could act on those biases. Then they could be guns drawn and not a clear mind. As a parent, how would you feel knowing that you don't know which teachers have a gun, and you've had bad experiences with prior teachers? What if that teacher
That's true.
Absolutely,
So my answer to your question is, I feel the same way about the guard in front of my kid's school. I don't really know the guard, but he's gone through training, and I presume that he knows what he's doing. And frankly, I feel the same way about a police officer. I don't need the police officer, but they've gone through training and they were willing to take on that responsibility. And so I would apply the same logic. It's so interesting that you bring that up, because it really ties back to why I feel like we need to be careful about how much responsibility we're saddling teachers with teaching our kids values, right? On the one hand, the system is saying, trust our teachers, they know better than you parents. We should be able to teach them what they need to know about sexuality. On the other hand, you guys are admitting that many teachers are not really checked for mental issues. We don't really know what is happening in these classrooms.
I'm not saying that teachers are not checked. We very frequently have like professional development days where we got self-care. So I wouldn't say many by any means. And when I'm coming into the workplace, I'm not bringing in all my baggage. As to say, you go into your work, you're not like, oh, I'm so depressed, my kid's this,
so
that.
Why, if there
I would be, because I'm fat. I got a lot of baggage on me.
As a teacher who is willing to step forward and will go through the training and will go through the screening, why not empower them to save our kids? I mean, in Uvalde, if there was a teacher who could actually save those children, then maybe we would not have seen so much death.
Maybe if the fucking police officers did their fucking job, we wouldn't have seen so much death. I mean, like, at the end of the day, what about that? The cops fucking failed on that one. The cops really botched that one up, brother, sister. It's pretty fucked. So
when we place teachers with a firearm in the classroom, it takes the instance of a violent occurrence from a possibility in the minds of these children to an inevitability.
But the children don't know. It is a concealed and carry weapon that has gone through the process of the local sheriff's department.
Well, so let's be real about one of the reasons why I'm kind of against it, right? Because I'm still back and forth on it. But what stopped? So I was a big fucking kid. I was a big fucking kid. And you want to know what? I was a big angry fucking kid because my daddy left me and I was dealing with my issues. So what's stopping the kid who's fucking almost 6'4" at 16 years old going up to that teacher, whether he's concealed or not? You're gonna find out eventually. It's not that hard to see a gun, going up, tackling the fuck out of that teacher, regardless of whether it's a man or a woman, grabbing that gun and starting to shoot people. What's stopping that from happening? Like, honestly speaking, because I could see that happening, bro. What's stopping that from happening? You know, like, I was a big fucking kid. Oh, 16. Yeah, I was a big motherfucker, dude. I still am. I could hurt somebody. You know what I mean? So what's stopping that?
Background check, training,
Yeah,
checkups,
no one knows
everything.
but the teacher
No one
and
knows.
the police
I have a
department.
logistical question.
Yeah.
Does this teacher have the gun on them?
Yes.
You
It
wouldn't
is
know.
holstered on them?
At all times.
It's a concealed carry.
It should never be in a place of a child.
But like, it's not magical to conceal a weapon. You think that it'll never slip with somebody carrying a gun for 8 hours a day, that there's a fucking gun on it? Like, you really, like, that's just, I mean, that's just impractical to not realize that, right? Like, we have to understand that. Like, you'll be like, oh, there's a gun on that guy. Like, you're gonna find you're with these teachers for months on end, every single day. Hey, it's just nobody will know. What world? What are they wearing? Like, what are they wearing to completely conceal this gun? Like, never. Like, what do I wear as a guy to conceal? Like, most of my teachers wore like a fucking pair of slacks or whatever, dress pants kind of a thing with a dress shirt. And like, where the fuck do they hide that, brother? Where the hell do they put that? Right up their butthole? What if it goes off in their ass and it starts bleeding? It just doesn't make any sense to me. You know what I mean?
Carry. It's illegal.
No, I know what a concealed
I
carry
just
is,
want to clarify.
but my thing and why this question sort of enrages me. Why are we asking teachers to carry guns? When did this become an occupational hazard? When did we walk into school and people were like, by the way, you could be shot today, so maybe you want to have your Glock strapped on you because who knows? This might be your
Glock
last day.
strapped.
That is ridiculous. If you 50
Damn,
years ago were to look at a teacher and be like, hey, do you want to hold this gun with you? You know, like, you might need it. They're going to scratch their heads and look at you funny. This is opening up a bigger conversation, right? But I think that even though it is voluntary, right, we still need to have this conversation. Like, it still needs to happen of why, even if a teacher was willing to carry a gun to school, they are even having to be asked to do that in the first place.
Sure. Teachers are not being paid enough. I mean, I think that depends on where you are at. You know, in New York, there's a lot of places where teachers are paid pretty well. In other areas, they're not paid very well. It really depends. I mean, on the one hand, you know, you're only working 7 months or 8 or 9 months out of the year. But on the other hand, like, here's my thing, right? Like, I don't know. I feel like overall, probably not. There's probably areas where it's fine and like it doesn't really matter. It's really a case by case basis. But what I will say is that even if you're like, oh well, you know, why should they get paid this much? They only work this many months out of the year. These are people that are responsible for raising your children. Like, it doesn't matter whether you think they're in there 8 hours a day. One of those teachers is going to be with some kid for 8 hours a day. 30 of your kids probably, right? Class by class by class. Do you really want to underpay people whose fundamental job it is to take care of your kid? I personally don't think I want that. I personally think that we should pay them enough so that they don't have to do other jobs. They don't have to do this. They don't have to do that. You know, they don't have to do whatever. It's crazy how we'll be like, we need to pay cops a lot of fucking money. Like, where I live, in the counties that I live in, like, they pay upwards of 100.
Bandit super chatted $1.99. Hey, Mr. Stomach, I listen to you during work. THXU.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. What was I saying? When it comes to cops, we're like, we have to give the cops this much for putting their life on the line all the time. Sometimes they are. Okay, well, why don't we do that logic for teachers? Well, they don't put their lives on the line. Really? They don't. Well, I mean, they're raising your kids. You don't think that you want like that person to maybe, you know? I don't know, man. I think that maybe they should get paid a little more, depending on the area, of course.
Every day, I wake up and I hand to you guys the most precious thing in my entire life, my children.
Boogers.
I think that it's important that our society will reflect how much we value you guys. I think that you should receive bonuses if you do a great job. If you're able to represent all of us as Americans, both conservatives and liberals, and you're able to speak on our behalf and take care of our children, we should reward you for that, and you should feel rewarded for that. And so I don't know exactly what you make, but I think it is really important that we invest in you and we pour into you. And when I see the entire budget that the state of California, for example, spends on education, and I realize that a sliver fraction of it only goes to you guys, it breaks my heart, and frankly, it makes me so angry. I don't need more bureaucrats. I need more good teachers.
I left the K through 12 and went to the community college, and I do pretty well. I'm going to be.
Yeah, sure. You know, I think that like sometimes there needs to be in a lot of instances like an update to different technologies, right? Because especially if you want to teach kids how to do things that we need, like technology and computers, it's going to be expensive. On the other hand, a lot of times when we get like bonuses, sometimes it could just go to the teachers and it makes them less stressed and have a better life, and it'll have a better outcome for your kids. And we just don't do that, you know? And it kind of fucks with, I think it's not necessarily the best way to operate, you know? So
clear with that, but also I have a master's.
You're not oppressed.
So I have a master's, but I had to work really hard to get where I'm at. But I'm also in a doctoral program.
She was so impressed with herself because he said that, like, what?
312 and went to the community college, and I do pretty well. So I'm going to be clear with that, but also I have a master's.
You're not oppressed.
I got it. I showed him that like one black person isn't oppressed, so I win. It's like, dude, this guy acknowledged that it's not everybody. I don't know, you fucking insane woman.
I have a master's, but I had to work really hard to get where I'm at. But I'm also in a doctoral program, and you're right, I'm paying out of pocket too. Again, I had a student the other day saying, I can't pay my electric bill. How much is your electric bill? I'll pay your electric bill. And so I put up students in hotels because they have nowhere to live. I have a student who doesn't have a family. He told me the other day, I need a dad. I said, I'll be your father, because it just broke.
No, that might be a little much. That might be like break some kind of thing. But God bless him for trying to do the right thing. You know what I mean? Makes sense.
My heart that a 19-year-old is in this world alone, doesn't have family.
Yeah, I would be scared to like calculate how much I spent for my classroom, right? Like all the materials, all the things that I'm purchasing, all the things that I'm doing. And it's just interesting to think that we are always told, like, teachers are heroes, they're teaching the youth of America, but also, we're not gonna give you enough money to survive comfortably. Like, you're gonna struggle every day. There have been days when I go to work and I'm like, am I gonna have money to put gas in my car? I guess we're gonna find out, right? And I know so many other teachers who are struggling to keep afloat. I can't even imagine I can't even think about having a family as a teacher. I think that growing up, I was not the strongest student. I didn't necessarily see the point in what we were doing. And I think that ultimately that felt like it was because education was something that I had to get through, not necessarily something that I was obtaining. But I think what really pushed me to go into teaching was wanting to give kids a space where they didn't feel the way I feel growing up, where they felt like they had power to make choice in their education, and that their education could be powerful in aiding them to do what they wanted to do.
Okay, cool.
So I'm not a teacher. I don't know how much you guys make. And I'm not going to use you as the example. I'm going to use a friend of mine. She's been at a school for a number of years. I want to say it's 6, 7, 8 years, and she's become tenured. And through her tenureship, she's accumulated so much wealth. I'm appalled at how much she's making because she teaches Spanish to 6th graders, and she's making over $150,000 a year.
Can I ask you a question?
That's a lot. What kind of school is it though? And like, that's not every school.
What school does she work at?
Public school.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
how much experience goes on with that too?
It must.
I don't know if I believe him. What school is he referring to? Because maybe, I don't know, man. Where does he live? I mean, it's possible, and it doesn't really change because that doesn't mean every school's like that. But like, I just have a hard time believing that. Okay, maybe she's right. I don't know.
I'm assuming because you've invested into your career, which I think everybody should. But for me, I look at it as you're making $150,000 in 9 months.
The prompt very clearly was, are teachers paid enough?
Yes.
I mean, that just seems like too much to be making in general. I mean, maybe she can cap out like $1.20, but I don't think that's the general experience.
And I mean, we're not. I've had to work second jobs doing DoorDash just because I wasn't making enough. If you look at these shoes, they are ripped, they are broken. From a teacher wish list, I could not even buy these shoes myself. You know what I'm saying? Sure. I don't make enough money.
So I wanted to clarify, this isn't an absolute. I'm not saying that every teacher is paid enough. I have no idea what your salary is. I have no idea any of those details. I'm just recognizing that if a teacher is getting 9 months and their salary is in 9 months, they get a summer off. Most of society isn't given 3 months to just
That's
go on
assuming
vacation.
they have 3 months. I'm an 11-month employee. For 1 whole month out of the year, I'm not paid anything. Nothing. I have to figure out my funds, save money that I don't have.
Well, again, like, I don't care about like that. Like, that thing, be a teacher. You know what I mean? Be a fucking teacher if you want 3 months off. I don't give a shit about that. What I care about is, like, are they getting enough money to be comfortable so that they can take care of my kid when they're at school? That's the priority, no? You know what I mean?
Try to supply for a month and a half. I don't get supplementary income. Like, that doesn't happen.
I do know one thing, that like what they'll do is they'll offer you like different ways to get paid. Like, they'll be like, oh, do you want to just get paid a check once a month throughout the year, even when you're not working, or do you want to get like all of it like in a burst before the summer or something? Like, they do like weird things based on how you want to do it. So I don't know how they do it there, but I'm just saying.
Critical race theory is anti-American.
Critical race theory. What really is critical race theory at its core? At the end of the day, like, I guess I don't truly know because I always get so many confusing answers. If critical race theory is just acknowledging like racial disparities and educating people on the existence of systemic racism, I'm all for it. If it goes too far and says that white people need to die, I just turned the video off. I'm for it because I hate white people. No, I'm just kidding.
Employee for one.
No, but like I wonder what exactly. I don't know. It's hard. Like I just don't know if anybody's like accurately represented like what critical race theory is. Maybe I'm probably just a little educated, but oh, we got some sex bots in here. Boom.
One whole month out of the year, I'm not paid anything. Nothing. I have to figure out my funds, save money that I don't have to try to supply for a month and a half. I don't get supplementary income. Like that doesn't happen.
Critical race theory is anti-American.
Well, I'll go first. My daughter, same teacher actually, who was asking about her pronouns, she said that she was going to be introducing some race-themed books. My daughter recorded this conversation in class. So what proceeded to happen is she started to talk to the children in their, I guess, identity groups. Oh, as an African-American child, how are you discriminated against? As an Asian child, she went through all of except white people. It became total chaos.
Well, white people aren't oppressed for their whiteness. Doesn't mean that they can't be oppressed for other reasons, like their class or something. I'm just saying. But again, there's a difference between them saying like, hey, so first of all, if you're teaching like racial disparity, you shouldn't single out black people and be like, you're black, so you identify with this. They should just talk about it generally. Everybody should be taught everything in the same way. Like a teacher shouldn't teach like, oh, well, you're black, so you might have this problem. What they should just teach is like, hey, black people generally might have this particular issue. You understand? Like, I know it's a little bit different, but they shouldn't be forcing the identity onto the kids so that they don't identify with it. You know what I mean? Like, they don't unintentionally over-identify with it, but they should just teach it in like a more general way. You know? Am I supposed to brush this big fluffy dog? Oh shit! Let's do it, dude. Oh, that's unrealistic. Let's get a little closer. Oh shit! Let's brush its butt. Hold on. Look at this. Look at this gameplay. He's blushing this big old fluffer, dude.
In the classroom, there was no education going on here. They were just literally going at each other, talking about who was more oppressed. It's not a matter of if something was racist, it's a matter of when something was racist or how the racist thing happened. So they automatically assume, critical race theorists, that racism is embedded into every single thing. How do you look a child?
I mean, it might be, I guess. I don't know. It's a complicated conversation.
Specifically a black child, in the eye and tell them, I'm sorry for you. Because of your skin color, there's no hope for you in the greatest country literally for them, because black Americans are the most successful black people in the entire world. And then turn around and look at a white child and say, sorry, you're responsible for the atrocities of 200 years ago.
So if they are teaching it like that, I agree with her. She's wrong. And I can understand where she's coming from, where maybe she feels belittled for like, the way that they teach some of these things. I get that. I don't get it, but I can get why she's saying it. You know what I mean? Because I'm not black, so I guess I can't truly get it. But at the end of the day, I don't think that that's how they're teaching it. I think it's less about that. You know, it's not as personal. I gotta stab this thing with this now.
All I have to add to that is that in our home and with our faith, I teach my children that it is awful to make someone feel hopeless or pitied. You're damning them to a future of failure if you are telling them, oh, I pity you and I'm going to do these things for you, instead of coming alongside them and supporting them and doing something for themselves that pulls them out of that hopelessness. And I think that those are two of the worst things that we can do as a broader society.
You know what I love about America? My mother immigrated from Morocco. She's a Jewish person. Everywhere around the world, we're known as the Jew.
Jews.
In America,
I'm just fucking kidding, guys. I'm just kidding. I'm not Kanye Westing. I'm just making a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke.
Known as American. And I think there's something so powerful about empowering any community to be American and to succeed based on your own merit. We don't look back into why we can't. We look into why we can. And so when my family taught me since I was a little girl, I can, I learned that I could. And that's why.
Sure, but the thing is, like, the reality is, if you're a white-looking person, you people can't go, oh, that's black. You know what I mean? Like, listen, there are still people who look at black people as less than, and there's more than you think. That's the reality. Okay, and like, I get what she's saying, but like, you're like, it's easy to kind of blend in when you're a white Jewish person. You know what I mean? That's like, in America at least. So yeah,
I think this country has empowered me so much. I want to see the same thing for
Wish it
kids of
didn't,
all
I'm saying.
colors in the United States. But if we're teaching them that there is no hope for them and that people will always look at them in a different way, then how are they going to hear the message of I can? My question for liberal teachers is, do they think that it's the right place for them to impose liberal ideas in classrooms, knowing that they have many students who come from conservative families? And I find that many of the schools have
Depends on
become
the idea.
battlegrounds for those kinds of ideas. And when teachers are bringing those issues to the classrooms, it's forcing families and conservative kids to have to address these issues, and we believe that they're simply too young to deal with those kinds of complex matters at that age.
Maybe. I mean, if you're, the thing is that I feel like it's because they just don't think that these things should be taught in general. Like nobody should learn them. But I guess if your argument's like, I don't think that they should learn these until, what is it that they're teaching? Because systemic racism exists. If you don't want them to teach too much identity, maybe you could wait till college, I guess. But okay.
Okay, so first of all, I think we need to define what critical race theory is.
Crow.
Critical race theory is a theory that Derek Bell and Kimberly Crenshaw and a bunch of former Harvard law students came up with, where they theorize that within certain American laws, racism is just embedded. And so I'm sorry for your experience, because you shouldn't have to go through that. Nobody should have to go through that. I don't tell my son you can't do anything. I have told my son you have to work twice as hard. I have to tell my son you're a black man in America. There's certain things you need to do to survive.
I mean, first, I think the idea that we are teaching children critical race theory in schools is ridiculous. As he pointed out, this is a high level, like university level framework. You are not going to walk into like Isabel's elementary school 5th grade classroom and see Isabel telling these people about the legal structures. In my opinion, how I define myself as an American, right? I define myself as someone who is proud of my country, someone who can look at the mistakes that my country has made in the past and the things that are keeping other people oppressed and recognize that these are still existing and that we need to work towards changing that. So I don't see how critical race theory could be anti-American, because that's how I define American. And I think it's—
I thought that she was, I could have sworn the way that she was talking, she like disagreed with, and I'm just confused a little bit. Okay.
very nuanced because people define American in many different ways,
I actually
right?
don't completely disagree with your definition of it. I think that maybe you think it's systemic and I think it's the individual. But I think that even in nuanced ways, like the example that she gave, I've heard examples where—
See, that's the thing. Push her on that. What do you mean by it's individual? Are you saying that like, why? What does that mean? You think it's individual? So like, what does that mean specifically? Oh, I think that individual black people, they're just overall doing worse because they're just like less than. Like, why? What is it? A lot of people will point to culture and not really explain or expand upon their reason why they don't believe that racism has an impact. Some people I get are genuine. Some people are just kind of just like, yeah, I just think black people are less than in some capacity, and they just don't want to be honest about it. And some of them will just use it's a culture thing as a way to not have to like say that, right? I'm not saying everybody believes that. I'm just saying.
my nieces have been segregated in the classroom at 4th and 5th grade. And like, well, did this
What does that
happen to
mean?
you? Do you have a 2-parent home? Are your grandparents raising you? And like, there's this line of
What?
victimhood. And as a woman that has dealt with sexism, I do definitely teach my daughters, like as a girl in this country, it is going to be a different experience than your father had. But I don't think it's beneficial at all to kind of institute that victimhood in their long-term mentality.
But you're acknowledging that like you're gonna have to. Some people are gonna have different. Okay, hold on.
Because then the line of victimhood, and as a woman that has dealt with sexism, I do definitely teach my daughters, like as a girl in this country, it is going to be a different experience than your father had.
Okay, yeah, that's what I think critical race theory is about. Like there may be areas where it doesn't quite go where it needs to, but that's kind of fundamentally what it's about. Teaching that there's going to be like a different way that you're treated based on like potential identity that you align with. Maybe it goes too far sometimes. I'm not going to disagree with that, but I don't.
But I don't think it's beneficial at all to kind of institute that victimhood in their long-term mentality, because then you actually start to see kids that are like, oh, well, they're different than me, so therefore their life could be better or worse than mine. And instead of engaging with those people, they step away. I don't believe that.
I mean, the argument that like people might look at other people and compare themselves to them in a way that could be toxic for their mentality, that's not necessarily like a bad argument. I think a lot of times, like, I think that in general, if you are somebody, if you look at somebody who's doing better than you and you're like, oh, they're doing better than me, you'll probably have a higher chance of being unhappy because you're like, you're going to compare yourself to them. I can kind of get that argument overall fundamentally. So that's why I would say be careful about the way that we teach some of these things. That's what I think a lot of social media is doing to us. Like there are people who would be perfectly content if not for the fact that social media is like so aggressive and in your face. Dude, come here. I want to get the quest. That they'll show people that are, you know, performing better than them. And then they get like upset with it. And they're just like, oh, I'm upset now. Like I look at that person, I compare myself to them. You see people on social media, they're like, here's the best of me all the time. They don't show you the worst of them. You kind of get like upset. You compare yourself constantly. There can be some toxic aspects, but that's why you just have to be careful in the way that you teach it.
That there's a victimhood to it. I think it's just kind of amplifying that, hey, this is the truth, this is what happens, and let's move forward with that. Having that knowledge to be able to kind of navigate through life is better than just, oh, well, I assume I'm the same as, my white counterpart. Oh, why is she able to do this? Why does she have this opportunity that I don't have?
But they're the same.
I didn't even know that she wasn't white, bro. I'm sorry.
But she has that
They
opportunity.
are the same, is what we're saying.
I think what the difference is, we're stating normative statements, and you guys are claiming that we're presenting prescriptive claims. So the normative statement that we're presenting is, these events happen in American history. These are the outcomes that have led from those events. What you guys are saying is, we're then adding prescriptive statements, which is, that's why you should never really try, because you'll never make it in this country.
That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that if you negatively press a child with these thoughts, that will be the outcome, because that's how human beings work. This is a psychological fact.
Ah, well, she knows. She's a teacher. She teaches her own kids at home.
The quality of education is the government's job.
Yeah, 100%. There's literally, who else's job would it be for the quality of education? Like, it's literally the government's job. They collect taxes for this, of course. Who else would it be? I think that's an interesting question.
I believe it is the government's job.
Well, why didn't everybody do that? How is not everybody sitting down? You pay taxes. Why isn't it the government's job?
Look, our funding comes through government. I mean, our schools are government entities, so it is. Policies are government. Everything's government. I mean, if you're in public education, you're in government. We're bureaucrats. That's literally our job. So it is government's job. So yeah, I believe it is. I believe it is the job of the government, because schools are government. That's literally what they are. They're government institutions.
True.
I completely agree. Government provides a certain quality to education. Obviously, they haven't provided those funds. They haven't provided those policies that are pro-teacher or anything like that. So it really shows in our education, in kids, and all around. We're just not at the quality that other countries are at.
How could you disagree with this answer?
I was going back and forth because what a government is, oftentimes is characterized as like this entity of like a group of people up there deciding what goes on. Where no, like government is just collective organization. Does the government have a role in education? Absolutely. I think that parents have to play a role as well, and not only being involved with what their kid is learning in school, but also.
Sure, but the quality is the government. What are you talking about? Like, this is a way, dude. I don't know. I feel like you cannot. I feel like you're just objectively wrong if you disagree. Like, even if you don't think it should be that way, the government, like. The quality is the government's job, right? Like, that's an objective truth. Okay.
Also, reinforcing strong educational skills. And that doesn't happen unless there is parent involvement. I know the kids that are being worked on at home versus the kids that aren't. And it plays out in test scores, it plays out in their engagement in class, and it plays out in their behavior.
You have to remember that we're a representative government, that it's based on the people, right? And so these public school systems are waiting for the parents to come in and say, this curriculum is not what I want to teach my kids.
What?
We, the taxpayers, control the curriculum. But the problem is we haven't been engaging in that system because we've been so distracted and pulled away from the education from our kids.
No, I would agree. The communities need to absolutely be more involved in their school boards and what's going on in education. And unfortunately, we don't have that. And oftentimes, a lot of politicians, albeit Republicans that are trying to cut a lot of social programs and a lot of social investment, as well as corporate Democrats who want to cut a lot of social investment, both of those, we see areas of corruption with our education system.
And let's be clear on what we're talking about government is. So when we talk about on a local level, it is government. That's literally what government is. When your kid goes into the school, they're going into a government institution. So I think when we're not talking about parents not being involved. I want you involved. Heck, please be involved. So I think our issue.
Well, don't lie, brother. You told us before you do not want those parents involved. Kill the ram. Kill it.
When we were talking about government, we weren't talking about excluding parents. We were talking about it is government's job to make this entity, which is public education, function. It has to. If government's not involved, you have no money.
So you guys teach in government schools, public schools. Essentially, you're teaching a diverse student body. You have conservatives, you have liberals. How can you better represent us, half of this country? It's sadly causing us to lose faith in you guys. We want to support you guys. We want to send our kids to your schools and your classrooms.
And I think that when we talk about all these differences, how do we sort of represent both of these sides, right? How do we bring these people together? I think it's also really important to remember that historically, this curriculum is one-sided in favor of conservative views, in favor of supporting white students, not students of color, right? And so I think that we really, as a country, need to take a look at our education system. I think we can all agree that there needs to be a lot of change in the system, right? And look at how we can build a system that represents, reflects, validates the experiences and identities of everybody.
Beautiful. That was good, girl.
Based, maybe? Okay, cool. Sure. All right, that was a good segment. It's fun.
I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.